now if you do any fabrication work or any body work where you're actually maybe welding panels, and not even welding panels, but also just general body work and metal work, then you probably are familiar with Roloc disc, and especially die grinders and 3-inch cutting disc or 3-inch grinding disc, as well as 2-inch grinding disc as well. And by the way, we're going to give you a couple of tips during this, not just a review or not just a comparison, but we're going to compare the Cubitron II, which is typically the 3M Cubitron in grinding and sanding, is a very, very good product and typically will make up for its high cost. So there is a high cost for the Cubitron II disc. But is it worth stepping up to the Cubitron versus, in this case, Benchmark Abrasives, which we can find on Amazon, which, by the way, we even bought the Cubitron discs on Amazon as well, but again, a higher cost. But the Benchmark Abrasives were a lot cheaper and had a higher quantity in the package. Now, all of these are 60 grit discs. And by the way, we got several different tips during this as well. Some about the disc and some about the actual die grinder and some that just may help you out, period. So let's get started and see, is it worth stepping up to the Cubitron or should you stick with the Benchmark Abrasives? So we've got our Cubitron II sanding disc or Roloc disc, and we've got also some Amazon purchased discs as well. By the way, we purchased both these on Amazon. These are obviously the 3M branded Cubitron, which are pretty expensive on Amazon. You could probably pick them up at your local supplier, paint supplier, detail supplier, wherever you can find your 3M products. You could probably find it a little cheaper there than on Amazon, but regardless, we did purchase these on Amazon, and it comes in a box of 15. Now these are, some other discs you could purchase on Amazon, which these are actually Benchmark Abrasives. So somewhat of a well-known brand in the grinding sanding industry. There's probably some cheaper ones you can purchase, like these here. I don't remember the brand, some D or something, I don't know. Anyway, thought we'd throw these in here as well. Don't really have a price on them, but you can find even cheaper discs. I didn't want to go like bare bones where you knew they were just trash, if you will, but we wanted to compare to see, is it worth stepping up to a Cubitron disc that we know typically the Cubitron Abrasives are very good, some of the best, if not the best, versus a pretty decent product, or what should be a pretty decent product, and they're both 60 grit. I believe these may be 80 grit, but regardless, we're really mainly comparing these two. Now, here's the big difference. This box of 15 will cost you about 40 bucks, like $39.99. This box of 25, or bag of 25, will only cost you about 20 bucks. So quite a bit of difference for a price of each. And let's break that down. So these are the 3M and these are the Benchmark Abrasives. Both of them 60 grit. This comes in a pack of 15. And this comes in a pack of 25. Now the price on these, as we were mentioning, is $39.99. We might as well call it 40 bucks, right? And the price on these is $19.89. Now if you divide 15 into 39, you're going to get $2.67. And if you take 25 into $19.89, we know that's less than a buck. In fact, it comes to 80 cents. So that means that $2.67 is more than 3 times the expensive. In fact, it's 335%. So in other words, 3.35 to 1. This is a third of the price of these Cubitrons. So, in a sense, these need to perform 3 times as good, 3 times as fast, or, last 3 times as long. However you want to break that down, you better see some improvement in using these Cubitron discs versus the Benchmark Abrasives disc. So let's get started and see what we find. All right, so here's our test subject. We've got a piece of square tubing. I don't know, this is probably 5 by 5 square tubing, about a 1/4 inch thick. That doesn't matter. But it's been sitting outside nice and rusty, so we pretty much split it down the middle, except I'm kind of favoring the Benchmark side. You can see we're a little more than 17 there at our hash mark, or our halfway mark. and a little less than 17 over here. So we're going to give this side to the benchmark abrasives, this side to the 3M Cubitron. So a little more to do for 3M. But anyway, and we're going to take a single disc, see how quick we can do this, as well as see how thorough we can do it, and see if one disc will clean this up to some shiny new bare metal. Do the same thing to this side and see if it takes multiple discs or if one can do it. And by the way, we're using the Roloc adapter, so you can quickly change these discs. That's the only way to go with these. And we've got a 3-inch and a 2-inch. Now, I didn't buy any 2-inch discs because I've got a tip for you that I'll show in just a moment. So I wouldn't recommend buying 2-inch, and I'll show you why. Now, there may be some instances where you just use 2-inch, and listen, that's fine. You use your 2-inch disc. Otherwise, I'll show you the tip in a moment. You're probably ahead of me right now. And then I've got another tip when it comes to the die grinder. I'll show you in a moment as well. Now, we are using the Milwaukee die grinder. I know there are pneumatic die grinders that are a lot stronger than this. This is not the strongest die grinder out there, but I'm purposely using that so we're not muscling our way through. We're actually letting the grit, letting the sandpaper, the sanding disc, grinding disc do all the work here. We'll run it in the same speed. We've got fully charged 40 amp hour batteries on here for the M12. So we're going to try to match it the best we can. So we'll start off with a brand new battery with each abrasive. We'll throw on the Cubitron II first, and let's get started. All right, let's throw on the Cubitron II 60 grit 3-inch disc. About a quarter turn, locks that on there. And you can see the overlap, just about an 1/8 inch sticking out around the edge there on the 3-inch pad. And we're on speed 2. Let's go ahead, we'll throw it on speed 4. And again, we've got a full 4 amp hour battery. And let's get started. Now, we're not getting through the mill scale here, but we're going to go ahead and just kind of clean all this rust off, get to the mill scale, and then go from there and see how the other disc does as well. Okay, other than the mill scale, most of that is clean. We've got all the rust cleaned off. And it looks like we've burnt about half the battery off. And that disc is still cutting. However, on the edges, we've pretty much worn that off. And you can see where we pretty much burn off all the discs. Now, if we hold this flat, it will continue to cut, but it's kind of hard to do so. It wants to walk all over the place. That's why most of the time we're kind of feathering on that edge and working the edge of that pad. Now this is where I recommend, instead of you buying 2-inch discs, you can see the center of that disc is actually still pretty much intact or pretty much still ready to go. So take my 2-inch Roloc. And by the way, you could take a marker and mark around this, or you can do what I'm doing. And now you've got a nice 2-inch disc that's still ready to go. I'll show you here in just a moment. And here's my second tip. That was my first tip. Here's my second tip. And really, this is 2 tips in one. So bonus day here. Now, here's the 2 wrenches to actually undo the bits out of this die grinder, which is pretty typical on any die grinder. You have your, your inner wrench, which is smaller, and your outer wrench, which is on the collet nut, which is larger. Now, I took this one and bent it, and when I bent it, it broke, so I had to re-weld it. But anyway, it's bent at a 90 because now, with one hand, I can put this on here like this, just hold it, and now I'm not fumbling around with this, and I use that to brace up against it. And this works on my straight die grinders as well. And here's the second tip. On Milwaukee's die grinder, and just like on, these are on wooden routers as well, it's got a safety collet on it. So you can see this nut is now loose, that shaft is now turning. However, that bit will not come out of there. You can't pound on it and put it in a vise and hammer on it. Has nothing to do with that. You're not going to free up that safety collet, even though this nut is free. So we've broken it free once, and again, I don't care. Somebody's going to say, well, you can just hit it and it's going to loosen up. And I'm telling you, you can hit it all day long and it's not going to loosen up that collet. What you have to do is keep turning and it will get hard again. And so now it's stopped again, and you can see I can put my wrench on here, and I can't turn this by hand, but if I watch this, just another quarter turn, now that's broken free. And now that's free as a bird. So that's on a safety collet. You actually have to loosen it twice. So you break it free, loosen it till it gets tight again, break it free again, and it will break free that safety collet. I'll show you what I'm talking about. See that collet? It's not loose in that nut. It's part of that nut, and that's made, it's called a safety collet, so that even if it breaks free, it's not going to let that bit go flying. We first saw those in routers and high-speed routers before we saw them on die grinders. So, just going to show you real quick. Now I've got my, what used to be a 3-inch disc on my 2-inch Roloc, and now still perfectly fine and ready to cut. So you're going to wear out that outside edge on the 3-inch and then just trim it out, and there's your 2-inch. So just a little money saver there for you. Now let's switch this out and go back to the benchmark. All right, let's take our battery out. That's our dead battery, or one that's not fully charged. Put our fully charged in, and then we'll put our benchmark abrasives off of Amazon, 80 cents each, 1/3 the cost of a Cubitron. Let's see how well we do. Still on speed 4. we see we're starting to burn up the edge there, but it's still cutting in the middle. Okay, I believe this is a situation where I don't believe that the Cubitron is doing that much better of a job than the benchmark abrasives, especially when this is 3 times the cost. Typically, when I'm looking at Cubitron products, consumables, they definitely outperform the others that typically you can find for cheaper, and typically they outperform it enough to justify the cost. In this case, I don't believe that's the case. I believe this benchmark abrasives is cutting almost as well and almost as quick, especially seeing that this is a third of the cost. By no means am I seeing it being a third of the performer in time or in the actual quality of the cut than the 3M. Now, 3M is not bad at all, but again, I'm not seeing the justification of stepping up to that cost. So kudos to Benchmark for definitely being a good performer. Same thing, we're burning up the edges here, and we can take this one, put it on our 2-inch. So here's our 2-inch Benchmark abrasives. You know, I will say it seems like that disc is used up compared to the center of the Cubitron. It still seems to be cutting. I don't know, it's probably about the same. So what's your thought? This is the 3M side. Looks remarkably the same as the Benchmark's abrasive side over here on the other side. Looks like we're getting the same quality of cut, or nearly the same quality of cut, maybe a little bit slower on the Benchmark, but again, at a price of 80 cents a piece versus $2.67 a piece, I think I'd have to give it to the Benchmark abrasives. It's not worth purchasing the Cubitron in this situation. And one last tip for you, when you're using these for body work, which is a lot less aggressive than what we're using on this rust and hard steel, a lot of times you want to kind of feather something out, especially like paint, Bondo, something like that, where you're wanting to work out an area where you're blending something. It could be a weld, anything, but where you're wanting kind of that softer edge, where you can use the same paper, a lot of times even some worn paper, but also taking a 3-inch disc and putting it on a 2-inch pad lets you kind of be able to kind of feather that edge, kind of bend that edge over and get a softer grind on the area you're wanting to blend. So just another little tip for you of running a larger disc so you kind of feather that edge on the smaller backing plate. Now, we were actually very surprised of the outcome with this. As we mentioned in the intro, many times we'll see that the high cost of the Cubitron makes up for itself because of the performance and how quick that it typically cuts and sands. In this case, I'm not sure if just the Cubitron is not that much better or if the Benchmark abrasives is just that good. Regardless, they are very close competitors. And at 80 cents per disc for the Benchmark abrasives, a lot better deal than the near $3 a piece for the Cubitron disc. So highly recommend the Benchmark abrasives. Also, make sure you utilize those 3-inch discs for your 2-inch backing plates as well. Give you a lot longer use out of those 3-inch discs once you cut them down, and you can still use them on the 2-inch as well. Hey, let us know if you've got any tips and if you've got any other brands that you like. We know Norton makes a good disc as well, but typically their North are higher than the 3M as well. So let us know in the comments. Also keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even TikTok. And if you don't mind, would you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done so already? And by all means, if you hated our video, well, give us a thumbs down. But would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day. Keep smiling.